All right, let's get to Al Jazeera.
Sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours.
These are Arabs who are going to welcome us as liberators.
Who will govern Iraq when Saddam Hussein is removed?
The U.S. invasion of Iraq was supposed to be easy.
That guy's a goat, by the way. That guy's a goat. He's cool as fuck. The guy who threw the shoe at him, 032 and 319. Thank you. Yeah. This is from the widows and the orphans and those who were killed in Iraq. That's what he said. He's a journalist.
The most powerful military in world history would go in, kill the bad guys, and transform Iraq into a democratic, pro-American oasis. But the Iraq War blew up in America's face.
Stuff happens.
And it changed both countries. It changed the...
Wait, from 032 to 319 or no? Just on 032. You have to say the shoe dodge was one of the few impressive things Bush ever did. I know. I fucking hate that he's like so nimble. I actually hate that Bush dodged those shoes. It really fucked me up. To see a dude so fucking nimble, so quick with it, like I hated that. Like you can't even let people just like experience a crumb of joy by just eating that fucking shoe directly to the face. You know what I mean? You had to also be good. I hate that. It was impressive, which sucked. Exactly. Just so fucking annoying. Fuck
the entire
you.
Middle East. In fact, it changed much of our world forever.
1 million Iraqis are dead because you lied.
Oh, Mike! Friend of the show, Mike Prisner, also a veteran, yelling at George W. Bush at, I think that same conference where he was like, accidentally went into Iraq, something like that. Mike Prisner of Empire Files, the GOAT. He's great.
Should we start? Within weeks of the September 11th attacks, the United States had occupied Afghanistan, where al-Qaeda was based at the time, and removed the ruling Taliban from power. But very quickly after, the George W. Bush administration began selling another war. It wanted to invade Iraq. There was no link between 9/11 and Iraq, so the Bush administration began manufacturing justifications. Iraq was in league with al-Qaeda.
There are al-Qaeda in a number of locations in Iraq.
Iraqis needed saving from their dictator.
Saddam Hussein's violations of human rights.
Iraq had
weapons of mass destruction.
We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
A focus-tested fucking sentiment to sell the Iraq War, a nation that had nothing to do with 9/11, a nation that had nothing to do with fucking Osama bin Laden, just nothing at all, to be, to the invasion of said nation to be sold to the American public. So good.
But those weapons of mass destruction were never found. Millions of people knew invading Iraq was wrong.
Did you watch American Sniper? I really did not think this hard about the Iraq War prior to today. I really thought Chris Kyle was the shit. But now, what was the point of all that? My friend, you were lied to. This is a good eye-opening moment for you. Chris Kyle was a monster. Not only was he a monster and a fucking perpetual liar, he literally was a racist monster, a demon who I would spit on his grave, who came back to the United States of America and was successfully sued by the absolute GOAT, Jesse Ventura, for literally fucking lying about beating Jesse's ass in a bar fight in a book full of other lies. If you know anything about the fucking Navy SEALs anyway, every single one of them that has written a book is usually a liar. They love lying. It's like their favorite thing. Navy SEALs love dropping Black Hawk helicopters, and they love fucking lying, like grossly lying and exaggerating about the things that they did. Chris Kyle was such a racist, monstrous piece of shit that he literally lied about going and sniping black people off the top of the Superdome in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Okay? Straight up. Like, who fucking lies about that, dude? Well, like, why would you... He literally went and found the most racist thing he could make up, which is wild because, like, it was a real thing that was happening at the time. There were, like, roving gangs of people that were, like, deliberately targeting and shooting at black people that were trying to survive in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina as the American government failed to act fast enough. But Chris Kyle was not one of them. And he still lied about it. Some of them were literally police officers at Danziger Bridge. Yeah.
20 years on, they've been proven right time and time again. The invasion of Iraq resulted in death, destruction, and massive blowback. And it gave us these guys. There's something President George W. Bush said in 2007, 4 years into the invasion of Iraq, that ironically sums up how badly the US messed up. And there's another part of this clip that we'll be coming back to a little later, so pay attention here.
Imagine Iraq where Al-Qaeda.
By the way, they also lumped North Korea into the axis of evil and basically forced them to preemptively get nukes. Not only that, but Iran. Iran was America's continued ally in the fight against Al-Qaeda. Okay, Iran, not really a big fan as Shias, not really a big fan of Sunni fundamentalists, okay, or Sunni adjacent fundamentalists in general. They're not too fond of Al-Qaeda, okay? Iran was added into the axis of evil speech that George W. Bush delivered by, was it, who the fuck put him in there? Regardless, they had no interest, like they didn't have any consideration whatsoever. They just add them in. They added them into the axis of evil. I think it was David Frum, right? No, it was David Frum, pretty sure. Yeah. David Frum added Iran into the axis of evil speech, and Iran was like, what the fuck? What are you saying? And then we continued to have Iran, we continued to rely on Iran for support in Afghanistan and even in Iraq and certain places, like literally against Al-Qaeda. Even after all that. Yeah, what do you say fuck me for? Yeah, the classic 50 Cent meme.
Has established sanctuaries to...
It was George W. Bush, but the speech writer that added Iran into the axis of evil was written by David Frum, I'm pretty sure. David Frum added that. Yeah, the phrase was attributed to former Bush speechwriter David Frum. Like, how is this guy literally allowed to breathe the free man's air? You know what I mean? Like, how? God damn it, dude. God, I hate... God, let's get back to this fucking bullshit, please. I mean, I'm fucking losing my mind a little bit.
Safely plot future attacks on targets all over the world.
It's ironic because by the time Bush said this, Al-Qaeda had established itself in Iraq, even though the group wasn't there before the US invaded. As one of the justifications for war, Bush and his officials insisted to an American public still reeling from 9/11 that Al-Qaeda and Iraq were linked.
The reason I keep insisting that there was a relationship between Iraq and Saddam and Al-Qaeda because there was a relationship between Iraq and Al-Qaeda.
Like pretty much all of the Bush administration's justifications for this war, this was a lie. Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda's Osama bin Laden were both Arab men who were once allies of the United States.
True! True! America, the greatest fake friends, dude. Listen, to the Kurds in the chat, remember this shit, okay? Remember. I know you got northern Iraq, okay? American contractors built it for you. You feel like maybe you have, for the first time ever, an opportunity to build like a fucking nation state. 35 million Kurds living in diaspora with no nation state, okay? This is my message. Look at this photo.
Osama bin Laden were both Arab men.
Look at this photograph. That's Donald Rumsfeld, dude, who played a role in fucking murdering this guy later. Do you understand? Anti-Soviet warrior puts his army on the road to peace. Ukrainians, think about this. Ukrainians are like, well, we're white. You know, maybe it's a little different. No, it's not different. They will go back to the Hitler understanding of fucking Slavs not being white like this. They'll go so fast your head will spin. The moment that you have no use for the American military state, you will get dropped like a fucking, you will get dropped, dude. Okay? They will use you, abuse you, and then spit you out. Hasan, Americans don't understand that kind of racism. They'll turn Benny Frank real quick to be like these garish, swarthy Ukrainians are not white by any means. These Slavs, you know, they'll fucking flip a script so fast. You'll be like, what? When did I not become? How did I not? I thought I was white. It's like, nope.
allies of the United States, but they didn't have much else in common. In fact, Al-Qaeda showed up in Iraq only after the US invaded the country, dismantled the Iraqi army and security.
Is the TOS coming now? What part? Is it 339 you said? 319, okay.
Forces, and created a security vacuum that allowed all sorts of foreign fighters and violent groups to enter. Tapping into anger at the US for invading a Muslim country, as well as the disgust at scandals like the torture at Abu Ghraib, Al-Qaeda was able to recruit and grow into something even more.
It's actually not even that bad. Here, it's just Abu Ghraib. You should see this photo. I'm sure you've already seen this photo. This is not a TO. This is one of the only non-TOS photos that you can see, but this is literally, America literally torturing motherfuckers. I think you should see this. If you haven't seen it, you should see this. It's a famous photo. The other ones where they make them like into naked human pyramids, those are, terms of service violations, obviously. Context, I haven't seen this. This was a torture prison run by the United States military called Abu Ghraib. Okay? This is where they tortured people for fun. This is, of course, different than the other kind of torture, which the CIA called enhanced interrogation. This was just torture for the sake of funsies. Of course, if you want to know where, America still tortures Muslims to this day, look no further than the Cuban landmass that we have on retainer as a permanent part of America's, America's like very open black site. We have Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay. Ron DeSantis was the Navy oversight legal liaison on site as we did some torture to Muslims without a fair trial at all. As a matter of fact, that one is still in operation. Oh, fuck, I remember Barack Obama ran on closing Gitmo, actually, if you guys remember that, but he never did. I wonder why. But yeah, electrocution, sexual assault, humiliation, murder, displaced, radicalized more Iraqis than anything. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Weird how, they didn't close Guantanamo Bay. Wonder why.
Torture at Abu Ghraib, Al-Qaeda was able to recruit and grow into something even more menacing. The invasion of Iraq propelled the group from a small, isolated organization into a genuinely global network that eventually became the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or Iraq and the Levant, as President Obama would say.
ISIL is a direct outgrowth of Al-Qaeda in Iraq that grew out.
The fucking biggest bag earner of our decade, okay, of our century maybe in media. Like, I cannot think of a man who just went from a Canadian government-funded newspaper, okay, that was a travel vlog created by, like, heroin addict hippies, okay, who turned around and got, like, a $100 million bag from Rupert Murdoch, okay, and just ran with it. Whoo! I'm talking, of course, about Shane Smith.
Out of our invasion.
This wonderful man right here. Oh, my Lord, dude. He literally fucking went in, pumped that shit up, was like, oh, yeah, we love giving you fucking opiates at, like, our parties. Do you want to fucking raise? Nah, don't worry about that. Suck my dick. Fucking. And he peaced out, dude. He peaced out. Sex, drug, and rock and roll coffee table book 20 years ago. Anyway, yeah, he fucking sold it to Rupert Murdoch. Used to be homies with Gavin McInnes, by the way. Yeah, no, Gavin McInnes is one of the co-founders alongside Shane Smith. He was just forced out before Vice's heel turn and just awesome shit that they do now. Like what the Saudis are doing in Yemen is not all that bad. They still have great journalists, obviously. Listen, I have friends that worked there back in the day, and there are still people that work there that are great. I'm just saying, just like with every media outlet, there's some good people there, and then there's some times when they got to do what they got to do, the State Department's bidding.
Which is an example of unintended consequences.
Those unintended consequences included Al-Qaeda sparking a sectarian civil war in Iraq by bombing some of the holiest sites in Shia Islam. They included hundreds of suicide and car bombings that killed thousands of Iraqis, And they included ISIS at one point controlling not just 40% of Iraq, but about a third of neighboring Syria as well. During the mid-2010s, the group was constantly in the headlines as it killed thousands and thousands of people, not just in Iraq and Syria, but also in Yemen, Saudi Arabia,
Turkey,
Kuwait, Bangladesh, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, France, Turkey, Belgium, Indonesia, Russia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Jordan, Germany, Somalia, the UK, Iran, the Philippines, Spain, Algeria, the United States, Nigeria, Sri Lanka. ISIS is no longer as powerful as it was, but it took years of a major US-led military operation that cost thousands more civilian lives, all to solve a problem created by the US occupying Iraq in the first place. Okay, remember that George W. Bush quote from a few minutes ago? This time, I'm going to play the first part of that soundbite as well.
For all those who ask whether the fight in Iraq is worth it, imagine an Iraq where militia groups backed by Iran control large parts of the country.
This is going to be a bit of a running theme here because, again, the US ended up causing the exact things it said it was invading Iraq to prevent. One of its goals in invading Iraq was to make the entire region friendlier to American interests.
Never forget that ISIS was forced out of, where was it? Was it when ISIS was forced out of its like remaining enclave in Iraq? There was a very interesting thing. Was it Mosul? Yeah. There was a very interesting thing that happened that like a lot of people, for some weird reason, never really talk about. And that was American-backed British troops and British mercenaries and British trucks allowing the ISIS militants to escape Mosul. Just don't know how that happened, don't know what that means. I mean, even when you talk about Turkey's involvement with ISIS, for example, running schemes for, like oil and gas substitutes for gold bullions and money and weapons, that was done under America's watchful eye, for example. That wasn't in, you're right, it's not in Mosul, it was Raqqa, Syria. I'm so wrong. I apologize. That was in Raqqa. You're right. You're right. I was thinking of Syria, not Mosul. I was thinking of Raqqa. You are absolutely correct. No, not a rare chat W. I rely on chat heavily. Anyway, listen, I can't remember every little thing that America has done, okay? We've done a lot of fucked up shit. Sometimes I'm going to say it wrong, okay? Sometimes I'm going to mix up my Muslim nations that America has interfered in the affairs of. It's hard. Oh, you hate America? Name all their war crimes? Impossible. Don't have enough time to do so.
Instead, the war helped strengthen its biggest adversary there. Iran and the United States don't seem to ever agree on much, but in 2003, Saddam Hussein was a common enemy. Iranians hated him because in 1980, he had launched a war against them that lasted 8 years and left 500,000 people dead. It was a brutal war. Iraq used poison gas against Iranian soldiers, and the US helped prolong the fighting by sending weapons to both countries, although most of its support went to one side. So even as Iran was probably glad to see the end of Saddam, the US was strongly hinting that Iran could be next. Here's George W. Bush talking about Iran, Iraq, and North Korea a few months before invading Iraq.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. And all nations should know America will do what is necessary to ensure our nation's security.
But something else happened. Iran, not the US, ended up benefiting the most from the invasion of Iraq. In less than 2 years, the US had ended the rule of Iran's enemies on both its eastern and western borders. Iran and the Taliban had bad blood between them too. Before the US invasion, Iraq was a buffer against Iran's presence in the Arab world. But after the invasion, Iraq became a foothold for Iranian influence to spread in neighboring countries. For example, Iran was able to build supply lines across Iraq to Syria, where Iranian-backed groups fought alongside Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad in that country's war. During the 1980s and 90s, Iran had cultivated and protected Iraqis who opposed Saddam's rule. And it was these Iranian-backed parties that dominated Iraqi politics after Saddam was gone. Today, posters of Iranian leaders hang all over Iraqi cities. Iranian commerce dominates the Iraqi market. And Iraq's security forces include powerful militias that are trained, supported, and sometimes even led by Iranians. It was these militias that helped defeat ISIS in Iraq. They fought on the ground with support from the US Air Force in the sky. Still, the US and Iran are adversaries. But the possibility of the US invading Iran the way it did Iraq, that's basically gone from next on the list to effectively zero. Because the invasion of Iraq very quickly changed America itself and its commitment to these kinds of wars. Here's how. It might seem odd now, but the war was actually very popular with Americans at first. USA! USA! That didn't last long. Almost everything that had been used to justify the war turned out to be a lie, including how quick it was supposed to be. Over 4,000 American soldiers were killed, and it took the US more than 8 years to withdraw from Iraq without much to show for it, other than, as we've seen, the strengthening of Iran and the spread of ISIS. Turns out the US wasn't able to impose its will.
Is Al Jazeera Plus, which is like oftentimes pretty fucking good in its coverage of American imperialism, is it just going to become more and more of a fucking like Wahhabist weirdo outlet as like I don't know, as like relationship with Qatar and the United States become better and better? Is that what's happening? Because like they have literally they normally would never. I am not talking about Al Jazeera in general, okay? Al Jazeera, the other side of it, sometimes not great, okay? But it is odd that like, I mean, this video is like, video could be way more blisteringly anti-US, and also, you know, they're like surprisingly talking about Iran more. Al Jazeera Plus is Al Jazeera's division made for Americans. Yes, I know. I've appeared on Al Jazeera Plus. I have friends that used to work for Al Jazeera Plus. Like, when back in the day, before Current TV was a television channel owned by Al Gore, when I worked at the Young Turks, and the Young Turks had a Current TV show. Then Current TV got sold to Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera basically kept some of those journalists on. A lot of my coworkers went and worked for Al Jazeera. When I saw you in the office, the employees were a lot better than they are now. What? Yeah, a lot of the good people have left Al Jazeera Plus. When I saw you in the office, Shobahu, the employees were a lot better off than they are now. Yeah. I can't believe Will worked for Al Jazeera. No, Will never worked for Al Jazeera. What the fuck? Al Jazeera was, I think, Al Jazeera's coverage was definitely better back
on another country by force. Bush, who at one point had a 90% approval rating, ended his presidency with just 22% of Americans approving of him. After Bush, the next two presidents both insisted they'd always opposed the war, unlike the political establishments in both parties who had backed it.
Many of us looking at the evidence ahead of time understood that there was not an imminent threat.
Bottom line, there were no weapons of mass destruction. They said there are weapons of mass destruction. I was against the war when it started.
But the US war machine didn't stop after Iraq.
I have to pee.
It adapted. Today, you won't hear many American politicians talk about Bush-style goals like nation building or regime change. Instead, US military power is deployed in small doses all over the world for assassinations or other special forces missions. Drones, missiles, airstrikes, all these let the US hit targets from thousands of miles away without American troops being in harm's way. That's made the drone program much more popular than the Iraq War. But drone warfare isn't clean. These strikes have killed thousands of civilians, with drone pilots often unable to tell exactly who they're targeting. And since the drone program is directly under the president's control, it's given American presidents the power to execute people all over the world, including, in several cases, American citizens. The Iraq War was always going to be a disaster on so many levels. It was also an illegal war.
It's not in conformity with the UN Charter from our point of view, and from the Charter point of view, it was illegal.
But the US insisted it was above such rules and that it had a right to preemptively attack whoever it wanted. Most of the world refused to go along.
When we went in, there were three countries, Great Britain, Australia, and the United States. That's not a grand coalition. We can do better. 30 seconds.
Well, actually,
are you honk shoeing and memeing because the United States is once again violating international rule of law that was created specifically so that the United States can bully anyone and everyone they want and claim that they're violating international laws so that they could justifiably invade those countries even though they themselves were in violation of international law? Who's more evil, George Bush or Tony Blair? George Bush. Easy.
Forgot Poland.
The problem with acting like you're above the law is that it gives others an excuse to break the rules as well. Listen to Bernie Sanders, at the time one of the only people in Congress opposing the war, warning of those consequences.
If President Bush believes that the U.S. can go to war at any time against any nation, what moral or legal obligation could our government raise if another country chose to do the same thing?
In the years since, we've seen that playing out all over the world. Governments breaking international law and committing war crimes with impunity, whether they're cracking down on dissent, stealing territory, or invading other countries. But maybe the guy at the heart of it all saw a link between what he set in motion in Iraq in 2003 and Russia invading Ukraine in 2022.
The decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq too. Anyway.
Iraq too. Anyway. My God. My Lord. What a self-report, dude. What a self-report that is.
Conservative estimates say that around 300,000 people were killed because of America's decision to illegally invade Iraq, although the real number is probably much higher. In Iraq today, sectarianism is rife. The economy is weak. Poverty is widespread, basic services are sporadic, and the security situation is, in many places, still dangerous.
لأن مجرد دخولها كان هو مأساوي يعني وحطمت وقتلت ودخل الإرهاب والمجرمين وغيرها والقاعدة.
إنه بالدهورة صارت يعني يا ريت قبل الحرب كان.
Wait, that's so weird. Wait, I'm so confused. What I saw CBS saying how fucking wonderful it was that America invaded Iraq, though. Speak American, what the fuck? Yeah, they went, they didn't get the Iraqi people to say that. Those words are going to be hard to come from the mouths of Iraqi people. So they basically interviewed the Iraqi people after. It was the American journalist that said those words, where he said, you know, the liberation took place or whatever. You can still probably find Iraqi people that will say that, though, but regardless.
20 years on, Iraqis are still dealing with the consequences of that invasion every day. But what about the consequences for the government officials who lied to justify the war? Or for the media that repeated so many of those lies instead of investigating them? To find out, you'll want to watch this video.